we can start the recording. It's on the IoT account, so we will be able to make the recording available to everyone. And let's see how we can navigate the working group, especially first meeting we had good attendance. This time it's a bit less. Let's see, maybe somebody will join. Oh, Phil already joined. Cool, thank you. Hi.
Hey, Phil.
And, I will,
Hello.
as last time, I will take some notes.
Oh, Phil might still be on the MinSwap call because I don't know if he's had a chance to do his Midgard spiel.
Okay, yeah, I mean, so we realize, right, Catalyst Fund 12 is really in full swing, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of makes attendance hard for many of the interested parties, because I think that is also important to get these things going, right? We only can align on stuff working on Hydra if we get the chance to work on Hydra.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully in the future, once some of these projects get funded, we can focus on actually doing the work.
Yeah. Okay. So that means we have a few attendees. Yeah, I'm not sure how we kind of organize ourselves that way then, right? So I think I've put 3 items in the agenda. So the Google Meet is something I think everyone who's invited can edit and even invite other people. So there's a fully editable item on the Google Suite. Should work for editing the agenda there, but maybe it's not the most visible thing. I would propose to let's talk about this maybe a bit later. I want to maybe do one.
Oh, sorry, you mean the Google Meets calendar event itself is editable, so we can change the agenda?
That is what we could put the agenda on, right? And what I put there like 2 weeks ago, and I've been also just off a bit over a week now, right? So really also just when I think also everything was busy with like this denial of service thing, I saw Philip doing some nice stunts there. That is what reached me in Croatia still, but anyhow, so didn't really change the agenda in like these 2 weeks. I think nothing really moved, so we'll see what is relevant today and going forward. I picked up basically something I thought which we could talk about last time already, and I put it there and I kept it there, right? What happened in the last 2 weeks is that we had like another like 1 or 2 people interested in joining this calls. I mentioned already briefly Michael and Sam from Ikigai, Ilya from MLabs. So there's definitely interest of practitioners and users.
They're basically the main people of the Hydra auction project right now.
Exactly, yeah. So there's another like a very prominent application actually using Hydra Head. And I want to basically recap briefly how this is kind of reaching us, right? So there was there is some Discord communication where people reached out to me, right? In the end, also what I asked here. And as we had this charter here, very draft stage, there is also this way of opening issues, right, of membership. So this is the current thing. Like if you're interested, open an issue or just join a meeting. This is also announced. I guess I didn't. Oh, damn it! Yeah, I had it quickly on master. Then I put everything in a PR, which I want to show now. But yeah, we should maybe. It was only today, anyways. But we should maybe, if you know it's every 2 weeks, right? We can just keep that invite to the Google Meet and just make sure that the next meeting is mentioned there, so people could join. It's open, but membership is more about being there and staying there and just, I guess, attending and being involved. I guess you can have a say if you're involved, I guess. And I did put that down also as a proposed change to the charter, which I want to briefly run by everyone here and maybe do try a quick kind of a vote for like a change, right? So, or maybe we'll see how should we do organize ourselves around these things. Yeah, this opening issue was used. It's actually was used by, this is Ilya, and I him to I also invited him to this meeting, right? So in the end, who's there is more important than what is written down even. But I also would basically say, yeah, membership changes as a PR, we could basically just sign through. We just had it 20 minutes ago, Franco, but I think he didn't see that we have the meeting now. So he's an engineer and working on Hydra. So I'll just make sure that this is also kind of covered. And ultimately, I would say, this is what I just amended today. In general, this is a bit like what you mentioned, I guess, or what you meant last week, George, or weeks ago. You just put down a bit more of the how and the operating model here into the charter. You might have more ideas. Maybe we can incorporate them right now, or can we just see through this one? And then we have yet another increment on how we would basically just deal with things to discuss, who's there, who's to be invited, and whatnot, right?
Is the recording from the last meeting available?
I asked Pi, but he didn't respond, and I think this was also due to...
Yeah, he's also been kind of busy. Yeah, fair. I'll check with him. I'll see if maybe he has it. Because it'd be cool because we had a pretty good discussion last time.
Yeah,
it'd be cool to extract some of the information from it for the charter.
We have written notes. I put them in the wake of last meetings right after, right? So this one was last time. This discussion about why work groups, the themes you mentioned.
Perfect.
Directions this could become. Bit about how we kind of organize ourselves, what level of detail, right? What's our altitude, flying altitude, basically. But then also this very important discussion, which should, I think, become an agenda item in by itself. But what is an agenda item, right? What's the goal of discussing, or what is it, what we want to do here in a synchronous way where people are asked to attend, right? Maybe it's more about to say, yeah, this is something we can ratify all together and think this is the direction we want to go, right? Or that's the next step we want to take, and so on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And also the bi-weekly thing. And this is also when I said, okay, let's do it in 2 weeks, right? I should be back from my vacation exactly that time. I came back like 2 hours ago, so just that worked out.
Okay.
And yeah, last time we had these people attend. And so I will do the same for today. This is the list of the membership list as by the date, and also the agenda as I think now as it was on the Google Meet. But yeah, I think we need to maybe find good visibility here, but keep it unbureaucratic still. Yeah, and also this is actually on this just put it on a PR maybe to kind of have something to walk you through. Charter changes, maybe. My first agenda item for today is proposed process changes on how we work, operate, basically just putting this fact down. I think this one now is a link. Yeah, that's broken. It's a broken link. It should be to the meeting invite itself, right? So that's the first thing. That we use the repo itself for artifacts we produce. Any kind of report or thing. If there is not a better place, I think maybe if we would ever write a CPS, I think having it in the SIPs repo or a CPS or even a SIP is obviously better suited there. What didn't change is the channels we have available, but we should, maybe we should have one on Intersect to have a bit more of instant communication. That just didn't change. And now, briefly, I reordered a bit with some links. So I basically mentioned these are people who asked to be there and never joined. So it's kind of new. On the other hand, Colin asked to be there and missed one meeting so far. And I will be updating this a bit throughout. The idea is that maybe this group is there for the people who want to be there, right? And also ultimately, we discussed the why and what last time. I think it should be clear to everyone here. The goal is that we'll be having some kind of say, at least in through Intersect, right? If there is anything about like what should be worked or funded by on working on Hydra, or if this group says there is this proposal, like the request for a proposal for an audit or whatever, this is a work package we can all be fine with, rally behind, then these are people applying for that, and basically then ultimately should be like kind of funded through some existing funds. Let's see how this kind of works out anyways on Intersect level, right? But basically the goal is to do that, but also to break up silos and align. So ultimately, yeah, this is what we produce is probably consensus at the first, and the very short term we could do that around the concrete project Hydra, which exists, maybe also how it kind of relates, what's in, what's not in, what is maybe Hydra v2, what is v1 still. We have quite novel ideas, right, which could become a head v2, which is basically Hydra SOA, which is maybe a more advanced in several things. And yeah. Anyhow, how is membership governed? So the people who are there are the right people. So basically the people who are there and stay there and basically are involved and are interested. In the end, anyone can become a member. We gain voting rights the meeting after if there is something to be voted on. And if you're not attending 3 consecutive meetings, you are basically not a member anymore unless you become a member again. And the member list is kept in the charter. So that's kind of to say, okay, so we should maybe keep a note of if there is something to be decided on or kind of something to be ratified or kind of underwritten. These are potential underwriters, and some of people voting for or against or whatever. If there is anything to be, if we gain consensus, how we gain consensus is not yet fully decided, but basically from these people, right?
Well, I think the voting stuff will probably emerge later on. I don't know if we will be voting on anything like binding anytime soon. I think initially we'll just have mainly just discussions and thoughts, and mostly we'll just be recording notes about what we have discussed and some of the things that are emerged. And then eventually, once we have multiple options kind of emerge on different topics, then we can start to say, okay, the group believes that this option may be the best based on discussion, whatever. So it'll kind of naturally come up. But in terms of voting process, I think, yeah, it'll be something simple like if there's a quorum of people present, right, then we can legitimately say that, okay, enough people discussed it and enough people supported it that it seems that the group is sort of has agreed to pursue a certain direction or to accept one of the options as the preferred option currently, right?
Yeah. I think in general we should keep it very lean. I'm not sure how we can achieve that concretely, but there is kind of consensus by default, right? So you have always the right to kind of say, no, that's not the right direction, or like, but basically by people contributing something, right? So, for example, if it comes to like figuring out the problem statement about interoperability of layer 2 solutions, or like any kind of off-chain ledgers, somebody is working on that, right? It doesn't need to have the agreement of the group to actually fully start every step on working on this, but more in the end, okay, is this something which goes in the right direction, and basically we work on it together by just in the end also maybe this group being involved on this repository or being informed regularly, right? So, and then if they would have something against, or basically to have an opinion going differently about one or the other thing, they had the opportunity to kind of speak up and basically voice and gain consensus. Otherwise, it's by default achieved, right, in that sense. But I didn't write up those things really yet, right? So it's more about, okay, this is just, okay, there exists a list of members and everybody can be a member. And if you're not attending too much, right, then you're not a member anymore. Whatever membership means now, really, right? What's your power?
Yeah, makes sense. And of course, like people, they can be removed, but that they can ask to be let back in. And if we believe that they'll continue participating, we can let them in, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's more like kind of a tracking of members as they come in, maybe leave right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sounds good. So Phil posted some things here. He's probably still not in a position to speak yet because of the Twitter space, but I guess these are examples of the types of things that he would like to discuss in the group.
So if it is agenda items, ideas for agenda, that's basically another thing, right? We collect, and how do we kind of decide on what to?
I would suggest we queue some of these up for maybe the next meeting, because
okay.
Yeah, we might have to we might have to wait for these until next time. For now, I know, Sebastian, you had like kind of a suggested thing of maybe a mini discussion on what Hydra V1 should look like, right? Maybe we could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I would briefly say, is anybody against these charter changes as of now? So
I'm supportive.
Okay, supportive.
Yeah, me too.
Good. And
yeah, he's good too.
There is big support already, so I think that is kind of, Phil didn't react. Maybe he reacted before already, and that's just. But he's basically, we have. I
think he's supportive. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all good.
Yeah. So it's very inclusive, very open, but it's really, there's not much at stake right now. Okay, good. So then I would basically just merge this PR, and maybe this is a way how we could also organize ourselves going forward, that if somebody wants to change the process, right, feel free to do so, either by bringing it up as an agenda item, but the more front-loaded we can have the looking into the changes, the quicker we can come to a conclusion, we can move on to the next item. Which we'll do now, and I'm struggling a bit in taking notes and kind of also leading the agenda items at the same time.
So one of the things about that is right now you're acting as the chair of the meeting, and if you're the chair of the meeting, it's very hard for you to take notes. So one thing we could do is if you're recording the meeting, someone can volunteer to, after the fact, just look through the recording and either take an AI transcript and just like fix it up a little bit, right? Or do it the old-fashioned way.
That means we need that.
So I'll volunteer to do that. I'll volunteer to do that today if you share the recording.
Okay, so sounds like we maybe do a bit of a rotating secretary kind of thing, and if you volunteer today, then we'll basically see that people joining next time will basically then goes round robin, and they will be surprised and not join again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I figure out the AI tooling for it, maybe I can just provide the AI slightly fixed transcript almost every time, unless I miss a meeting. So I'll look into it today, and I'll let you know to what extent this can just be automated.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So George is the secretary for this meeting. Then we can basically, while taking note of Phil's pointers here, right, which we might want to harness into an agenda item, coming back to that maybe at latest more closer to the end of the meeting. The agenda item I brought today, which is the second one now, is what is Hydra Head V1? It's I want to seek a bit the discussion outside of the people involved day to day in executing that plan, more into, ideally now more to the kind of the user base. Maybe Tudor might feel spoken to, but also what is yours, George, for example, opinion in, okay, what could be the minimum set of a Hydra head? What is, and we need to maybe kind of, so I want to have a high level discussion, high level enough that it is maybe including referring to some of the things we have already on our roadmap, but not too low level and saying, oh yeah, we should do exactly the mechanism that way, right? As we have it sometimes, George, these kind of conversations, like the detailed discussions, more about, okay, we need to have a way to kind of enhance the layer 2 state of a Hydra head. Is it good enough? It is, if it's, for example, in the limited form, basic form as it's scoped out right now, which is, it can be done. It can only be done by once at a time, and it takes some longer now in to be defined time frames, right? So whereas like concurrent and faster, or like whatever that means.
Yeah, those are all improvements.
Yeah, exactly. And so to kind of gather a bit that opinion, but not only about the on-chain protocol, like what is it, what you can do, and kind of like hard features, right? But also, okay, what is the level of reliability, if you want to say so, about the kind of the networking stack, right? Or what is the situation of the interactability API with that tool, right? Maybe also what is good enough for kind of a good version 1 in terms of interacting, or also running, monitoring, and operating this thing, right? To each one of you, maybe, right? So I'm not sure if we can fully address that agenda item today, but I would like to kind of have it more of not really a brainstorm, but more like, okay, yeah, we can just, I'm asking maybe Tudor, what is it for you to have a Hydra head version 1? And we can maybe expand it. This kind of become a bit of like one by one, add a bit more things to it, or kind of say, yeah, that's maybe not needed for a very first thing we might want to call V1. Just as a brief reminder, V1 could kind of mean something which is a long-term supported thing you can build on as an application. You can rely on this feature set being there and not suddenly being removed for one or the other functionality. And at the same time, also some level of assurance, right? So there is like, we might want to do some additional peer reviewing, auditing on the crucial parts, the on-chain parts, for example, for that version, and also some level of API stability. This is what I mentioned originally. This is what I believe is kind of V1 and not V1. Yeah.
Yeah, the ball is in my garden, right? On my side. So these are highly like engineering and architectural stuff that I cannot speak on a high level on how this should work. I can kind of tell you guys what I would want to use it for, and maybe a little bit of how. So again, just community perspective. I'd love to have a tool or like a SDK to start off a Hydra head, where I can facilitate transactions between multiple users, like many to many. That's our Hydra micropayments part that we're trying to do. And in order for that to be easy, I'm thinking of the next ones, because we're not going to finish this bit before we create our own solution with TXPipe, I guess. But for the future, it would be nice to have a Hydra head spinning up possibility as easy as possible and well tested, in order to be able to use it as a ledger. for inscribing information about everyone's accounts, and on the other side, to also be able to put tokens there and do many-to-many transactions. I don't know if this answers the questions. It's very technical for me. Another thing, I guess, their Hydra part is this. There's such a big need for a DEX that would run in Hydra. So that this might be telling you some stuff more than I can understand about it. But the idea would be for people to commit and decommit anytime some funds and tokens to that DEX, to that app, and they can trade it inside as much as they want, and they can withdraw bits of them and so on. So it's like a DEX wallet sitting on Hydra with very quick transactions, like half-a-second transactions. I hope this helps.
Yeah, I realize the question is quite use case specific in the end, right? Yeah, what you characterize is more like maybe, the asks and requirements on an L2, an abstract L2 as a whole, whereas Hydra head is maybe more of a building block, a concrete one, which could fit into this puzzle, but maybe,
But there were some main themes that kind of emerged from Tudor's answers, right? Yeah. So deployment needs to be easy, and like coordination for deployment needs to, we need some tooling for that, right? Because right now, to deploy a Hydra head, you need to know all the peers, collect all their information, and then each one of them has to run a Hydra, a Hydra node, and then they have to establish channels between each other. We might need to have some tooling or something available to make that easier to establish, right? Because otherwise deploying a Hydra head will always be kind of a pain. I don't know if you guys have made any efforts in that direction, but that would be something that, would be good to have as well. Interaction with wallets, right? Yeah. So that users can actually send transactions, to L2 and sign them via an interface, right? At least one popular wallet, I think you'd probably want to integrate with.
We have it
to be.
It's very similar to what also Phil just posted here, I guess. Yeah, that's very good point. So on the usage side, this is really okay. How you want to have it interfaceable, right? That means, okay, it must be supported by at least one major wallet, or basically from a web-based situation. So that could mean there's support for direct support actually for sending and for crafting and sending transactions into such a Hydra head ledger. That basically that level of integration should be easy or doable very easily. That is a very good point, which is often overlooked, and just something I also just bumped into when I did this Doom proof of concept demo just lately, right, myself. Using it from the web is still a bit like rough on the edges, and I think making that smooth and good is, in terms of interactability, very important. So that's I think that's something which is echoed here. Tudor.
Yeah, so in order to use a Hydra head, you need to spin up a node like this.
Yep.
This will have to kind of, you already started discussing it. So a Hydra dApp or sidechain is going to have to be usable by anybody with a wallet, and maybe with an account or with a dApp, or just the wallet is the account. But also in the decentralization method of this kind of tools, for our micropayments and for a DEX that somebody will build on some kind of Hydra, maybe on this particular one. So there's going to have to be nodes, and these nodes, the way I'm seeing it, we can't just have 500 people spinning up nodes and securing this this thing. At least this is gonna take years. What I was thinking is for our Hydra systems to work in a decentralized way, the responsibility needs to be on the nodes, and those nodes can be spun up by those SPOs that we know for a long time that are active and have been doing a good job with the blocks and no shortages and so on, and propose to these well-known people like Richard McCracken, like real OGs, and like propose to 30, 15 will accept, I guess, and give them rewards for the work that they're doing. But it has to be kind of differentiated between a node and an end user. This can't be connected if we go on and do some real stuff.
So kind of moving towards the delegated model in a way, right? Because if you're a direct participant in a Hydra head, there's no escaping it. You have to run a Hydra node, and you have to, like you can't just have just a wallet, right? You have to actually run a process on your own that does it. But if we're working with the delegated model, where users could send messages to one of the participants to, have their requests be processed within the Hydra head, that's kind of what you're talking about, Tudor. I'm not sure. Like, it's hard to define where the scope ends for Hydra, the repository and library, and where it begins for the integrations with it, right?
That's a good point.
So what does Hydra, the core library, need to have as a sort of feature set that is frozen, audited, battle tested in order to enable those integrations, right? I would argue that probably in terms of the delegated stuff, a lot of that has been prototyped and implemented and actually brought to MVP level by the Hydra auction project, because that was the direct goal of that project, to flesh out this delegated model use case, right, and develop an SDK for it. Now, I haven't been involved with that project for 5 months now or something. I'm not sure how far they what they accomplished there, but the type of thing that you're talking about, Tudor, could be sourced from this repository that is dependent on Hydra, right? Whereas the feature set of Hydra itself, I think, as is already pretty usable for dApps. I mean, yes, it's annoying that you have to open and close Hydra heads all the time, right? But from the feedback that I've heard from the Hydra auction guys, they think it's still somewhat feasible to be, to spin up Hydra heads on demand to host auctions or something, right? And then have to close them down before any information goes out. For your use case, Tudor, I don't know how often you want to be releasing information back to L1 based on what happened in L2, right? For you, it might be less feasible to open and close Hydra heads all the time, because you might have a different set of participants having to, manage information in L2. What Phil said about some of these integrations in terms of wallets for signing like L2 transactions and indexers for having visibility into the Hydra head, I think that's fairly necessary, because for app integration, without that, it's very, very hard to do anything, in terms of L2 transactions going back and forth.
These boxes need to be ticked, right? But we could basically say, so it needs to be at least one indexer needs to be supported by that, or we could maybe now, the question is, do we need to break that down further to say, okay, what exactly is it? Like, we need to kind of retrofit what the Cardano node API is onto a Hydra node API to reach for good compatibility, right? Or is it just say, okay, it's demonstrated in one integration, that's just good enough, right? Because, for example, that I think could be done or has been done already with Kupo, but what is good enough there, right? So, and I kind of like the wording of Phil here also, that kind of, okay, is at least one web-based SDK is kind of shown to be ready and up to speed, right? Kind of that could also just map to at least one indexer can be used to or at least one indexer is supporting Hydra. So like an existing tool you use on the Cardano layer 1 can also be used on this L2, although it might not even be needed because I don't know, it has some lots of capabilities more. I want to briefly talk about the support for other chain data provider. So that's called like at least one external provider, as Phil says, like using or running a Hydra node on top of chain data provided by an API, not a dedicated Cardano node, which is accessible by the Hydra node, right? So that might be the question is, is this needed for calling it a version 1 or not? I think it would be helpful, but there is also, I guess, good reason why we didn't shoot for it in the beginning. But although it is lots of the cumbersomeness comes from having this full node L1, right? So
discovery of Hydra heads that are running, right? Because how do you know which Hydra head can process your transactions, right? Like how do we find out which Hydra heads exist and which ones are available under this delegated model, right? Where does this information get posted? That kind of thing, right?
Okay, so discoverability is yet another thing. Having basically means that Hydra head V1 means there needs to be a service, an explorer, or something like that.
I mean, it doesn't have to be. I mean, to start, what I'm talking about is if we're talking about user wallets interacting with Hydra by submitting transactions via some DApp or something, right? The user wallet needs to know how to submit these transactions, right? And where. And maybe if it's a Hydra enabled DApp, it could tell you, where, but that information somehow needs to be used and communicated to the wallet signing the transaction, or maybe the DApp handles the submitting of the transactions, right? But then how does the DApp find out about the Hydra heads that are available to process some of its transactions under this delegated model, right?
So what Sasha just posted is more about the on-chain representation of heads, right? So I think that is fairly or in the process. No, but it's very interesting. Like we have to send the transaction, right? That information. So do you own something on this Hydra head here, right? Or on that one? That information is, I guess, missing, and having that available could be exactly that.
Actually, this Hydra Scan Explorer is pretty cool. So you're tracking all the Hydra heads that are currently open or finalized under the Hydra validator address, I guess.
Yeah, basically
the minting policy.
It's just tracking all the Cardano transactions, the layer 1 transactions about opening and then also closing heads. But this is really what heads do exist on chain, right? But this is missing maybe this one crucial piece, which we maybe should take note of, is how to reach these heads if you're not a first-class member, right? So kind of enabling a bit this delegated setup where the user or the DApp, right, which is used by the user, is not a first-class citizen, right? It's actually not kind of wired directly to a Hydra node. In that sense, it's more about it's just using an existing Hydra node, and in a way, it could be quite realistic. That means, right? So if there is a head, and in this head, you get paid for doing some mechanical Turk work online, right? So play to earn or whatever, right? And you get paid in a Hydra head. How would you know that you own something in this off-chain ledger on this particular Hydra head? Because on-chain you wouldn't know it. It's in the case of Hydra, which doesn't put state updates every now and then. I think in any solution, these wouldn't be complete anyway. So it's always data availability is a problem, right? So that kind of discoverability and knowing, okay, where and which Hydra head do you own stuff? That is an interesting, maybe open problem, which is maybe to be solved to say, okay, this is done. But this kind of touches very much on this interoperability, right? So kind of knowing where things are and how to interact with them.
So you need to know for each head who's running it, because that's the trust aspect, right? Because if you just have some random people, they might be corrupt, right? So You need to know who's running it. You need to know which applications they're servicing, right? So which types of applications they're capable of servicing, and then you need to have an ability to query them for the state that's related to a particular application, so that hopefully you can stitch it together into something that you can show in your UI, right? Or in your wallet. That's ultimately what you need to work with these Hydra heads that are deployed, right?
So to work with Hydra heads as like small little networks, right, to use and connect to and utilize, which is the question whether this is in scope or not. Yeah, but okay, that's interesting.
I mean, if you look at Bitcoin Lightning only services one use case, which is micropayments, right? But for that micropayments, they've established a whole P2P gossiping, information sharing network that talks about for each state channel, what are the capacities of that state channel, who are the members of that state channel, so that you know that if you need to route between them, you know how to do that, right? This is the type of metadata that you need to make it discoverable so that people can start interacting with this network. Now, I know Hydra P1 will not be a network thing because that's something for the future scope. But regardless, even if we're just talking about isolated state channels, in order to work with them, you need to know what they're capable of, who's running them, and what's the current state, right?
Yeah. So individual head state channel information, discoverability, just the basics of that, right? But these should maybe be in place, yeah.
But I was a bit late, so I'm not sure if I understand the problem. I don't think Hydra head directly is the entry point for the users. Rather, if there is a service on Hydra, it will be created by some dApps or set of nodes which share that information already on a website, through which the users can connect to the Hydra or interact with the Hydra head. So I don't see the need of users being able to directly discover the head and then interact with it. What would
well,
you
it's
do
not the
with that?
users that are querying this, right? It's the users through the user interface that shows them this information, right? And for your point about the apps, some apps may choose to just have their own dedicated Hydra head that they're running, and all of their user traffic, like user transactions, go through that head. But other apps may want to open it up to different providers of Hydra services to host those pieces, right? And then the users could choose. So, for example, Hydra Auction was architected so that the auction application doesn't actually have just one Hydra head, and that's what all the auctions have to be run by. The seller could actually choose which Hydra head, or which group of Hydra head participants will spin up a Hydra head to process the bids for this auction, right? In fact, a future feature will be that I don't know if they've committed to it or not, but you could potentially have split up the bid into multiple and host it on multiple Hydra heads that are hopefully independent from each other, and that reduces their ability to censor bids, right? Because if a user gets censored by one of the Hydra heads, maybe he won't be censored by the other one, and when they all close and we get back their final standing bids, we can combine them together to find the best bid that on L1. So that kind of more flexible pattern or architecture, where you don't want to trust one app to do both the user interface stuff and the L2 stuff, right? If you want to be a little bit more decentralized, you'll need to have discoverability for the Hydra heads that are willing to process the the interactions for this app on L2, right?
Yeah, so while maybe many of the things can be done by the individual applications, right? Some of them should maybe be done more like from the shelf already, right? So kind of, or in the very least, we need to enable this identification, saying, okay, this is this head, this is different, and this is run by those guys. So we can maybe support that in one way or the other through a mechanism to kind of make, to support the discoverability of a head. And the Explorer, what we already have, I think, is the first step, is a good step. But I think there's still some gaps probably here in this realm of discoverability. And Reza, we were just brainstorming a bit, kind of asked Tudor about what he thinks could be Hydra Head version 1. Of course, not very technical discussion at this stage. We also don't want to have it. It's more about, okay, what do we believe is version 1. We got some input from Kill on the chat too. Couldn't speak, unfortunately, today. And so I think it touched a bit on interactability, API a bit, now with discoverability.
I don't know if you guys also talked about the robustness and developer experience. These are the things I think is the most important, because we want to make it as easy as possible for the people to start using Hydra. And once they are using Hydra, we want to keep them through a good experience, because I mean, if they start running Hydra with a lot of difficulties, and once they run ahead and they run into issues, they cannot diagnose the issue or fix it, and then maybe they lose motivation to continue with it. So we don't want that. So I think robustness and user experience or developer experience is very high on the list, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. So some of the new members, Sam Delaney and Ilya, would be able to give us some great feedback on that, because they've been building on Hydra for the past year or more, right? They've been building this Hydra auction app. They've been, already providing some of the feedback that made it into, features in Hydra, the stuff to support smart contracts and moving collateral in and external commits, that kind of thing. And in terms of robustness, I mean, they've been kicking the tires and testing deployments for Hydra, from a dApp developer perspective. So hopefully, if they come out to the next meeting or the one after that or something, they could provide some useful information about this to tell us about how easy is it to deploy a Hydra head, and how robust is it once deployed to various things that come up.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Tudor, I don't think you guys have started prototyping on Hydra yet, right? Your team? You're waiting for funding from Catalyst?
For an app on Hydra, no. Just opening the Hydra node and sending tokens there to be updated, for their metadata to be updated. We're pretty close to finishing that app.
And that is basically the other use case you have, right? And what is needed for that, to making this a production case, version 1, fully stable, relied upon use case, right? What are the gaps still in the Hydra project missing to kind of enable that? Would also be interesting, because there you have more of this Hydra head is used for a specific purpose of updating, I think, token metadata or supply chain tracking.
Mm-hmm.
I'll need to get back on this to talk to the developer. The thing that I know is he had a very hard time spinning it up. But guys, you've been speaking to him, and we haven't tied it all up together to see how it works. So I hope in the next few weeks we're going to be able to do that, and I'll come with a report on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we need to. I think we want to wrap this discussion up anyways a bit. So it's more of a kind of a brainstorm right now. I imagined the agenda item should become what I believe we should have is a concrete list of things which we can then take into planning and executing on that, right? Saying really, okay, that is the things which we still believe are needed and we want to work on now before we can call it version 1. And also, these are things we need to still make sure that before we do an audit, right? The question is how, Phil also mentioned audited and battle tested. Okay, what does it mean, right? How much audit? And is there going to be an audit on what version of the protocol? This is version 1. Okay, cool. That and not further, right? So before we need to have some that time too in between.
I think that's what he meant. Once based on this discussion and with discussion with other stakeholders or something, we determine what is the V1 feature set that should be frozen for V1 and long-term support. That's the one that you would audit. Probably you would audit the on-chain code, right? Yeah. I'm not sure to what extent you can audit the off-chain and L2 communication. Probably very hard to do. And then battle testing just means that I guess you benchmark and stress test the hell out of it, and that kind of thing. I mean, to the extent that you can, right? And I think you guys have already done that. The testing frameworks in Hydra repo are pretty good.
Yeah, and testing is good, right? But there is this one dimension which I think we need to also cover in this, which I would want to also cover in this kind of what is Hydra Head version 1, is how much reliability do we need on networking, right? How often is it acceptable that the head needs to be closed and reopened because there has been some off-chain communication, misalignment, consensus breakdown, basically, because we trade in a lot of security for the participants of the head protocol against liveness, right? So what is the accepted liveness? And this including the network requirements. So what is from the networking side needed? And
yeah. Oh, go ahead, Edward.
Yeah, I know we're close to the end of the meeting, but you're always guys saying closing the Hydra head, like this is a mandatory thing. I've never seen in the use cases that I see working for the community, I never saw the need of closing it. And I guess there's the economic use case like poker or multiple transactions between a group of people who have spun up this Hydra head. But it doesn't seem that this is ever, well, at least to me, it doesn't seem that we're really going to need this. It looks more like an exercise.
Yeah. So what I hear is it should not be needed just because something broke, right? Because that is what can actually happen today, is if you lose some messages, you lose some information about the state, you come into a disagreement state between the parties running the Hydra head, right? And in this disagreement state, you need to close and reopen the head to reach again a fine state. And what I hear from you is this shouldn't be needed, right? And I think maybe this is what we need to take into concrete idea finding and saying, okay, how can we make that closing a head in practice shouldn't be needed if you don't want to do that, right? If you have in principle agreement between the people running the nodes, they want to run the nodes, right? But no technical failure should kind of lead to you needing to close the head because a message got lost or basically somebody restarted their node in a bad time or whatnot, right?
Yeah, and the last thing, it's always relying on all nodes agreeing, which is just not real. If I'm gonna have 20 nodes and a couple of them are off, which is gonna happen all the time because of everything, then we can't reach any consensus for the first transaction. So it should be a 50-60 or some 51% agree, whoever is online, you know. So this is another piece that I had to say.
So
there's some constraints to what
security
you can do with
liveness,
state channels.
right?
Sorry? Didn't get that.
What I hear is the willingness to trade security against liveness, right?
Well, yeah, but it's just not gonna work. If you wanna put 3 nodes and I'm holding one with my teeth, electricity, battery, Tesla Powerwall, everything, and you do the same, a third person can do the same. It's not going to be 20, 50, 100 people doing this, and they're not online all the time. That's, I don't know.
Yeah. George, what did you say in response to this before, maybe?
Some of these things just might mean that state channels are just fundamentally not for your use case, because state channels kind of rely on the, everybody. The reason why everybody has to be online and has to, continue having a consensus of everyone is because if you don't, then the person who isn't online, their funds can be stolen, right? Or not stolen, but their latest transactions might not be recognized, right? The ones where they receive money. The head might close with a previous state where a payment that was made to them isn't recognized, right? So it's a fundamental thing about state channels in that sense. So that's why you need everybody to be in consensus. And in terms of the reason why you need to close the head every time that either consensus breaks down on L2, or if you just want to release any funds or any information on L1, is just because of the way that the implementation works right now. Until we have incremental decommits, right, which allow you to partially release some information or funds out of the head without closing it. The way that Hydra works is you bring everything in, then you open the head, then you close the head, and then you bring everything out, both funds and information. You can't, partially move anything out of the head before that. So that's what currently the Hydra implementation, that's how it works. And Sebastian's team, they have, partial work completed in terms of implementing the incremental decommits and incremental commits, so that things can move in and out of the Hydra head without closing it. So I guess the question to you, Tudor, is in that building a use case on top of Hydra, how critical are incremental commits and decommits to your use case? Or are you able to just get by with a Hydra head where you have to bring everything in before you open it, and you have to close it before you can take anything out of it, right?
So this last feature that you said, closing and opening, I just don't need it. Incremental commits and decommits are super important, and we're just going on knowing that it's going to be there at some point. For example, when we put 5,000 collection of wine into Hydra head, and we sometimes take it out once a month, so it gets updated on layer 1 as well. It would be nice for us to be able, when we have 5 collections, 35,000 bottles there, and we only need to update one of the collections, or we need to burn one of the tokens. So we're always going to be needing the partial commits and decommits. Also to add the next collection. So that's for the wine, for the updating thing, and for the micropayments, where you have an app where you have where the users must be able to commit 108 at any time or decommit it. So this is totally critical. This is the answer.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, for payments, there is other options too.
What's the feasibility, Sebastian, in terms of getting incremental commits and decommits into V1?
I think the things we discussed so far are sometimes further out than having these. I think a basic version of this is within reach and is well understood. And I think now I'm basically putting my opinion in front of basically everyone, right? I think it makes sense to have it because it makes it lots of flexible. It allows for more flexible use of this building block, right? In the end, Hydra head is a building block, and we need to treat it as such. I would
agree.
Take on incremental commits and decommits. The consensus changes, I hear that also every now and I still want to keep the discussion open there, right? Because having this flexibility also in the way in how the consensus is reached, is it like everybody needs to agree, or only like a half of everyone, right? Or 60%, if there is a threshold, whatever. Because that is maybe interesting. The question is, having this in or not in is much more decisive in the scope of the project, I would say. Also how it's positioned, right? And the problem is we cannot really. I realized today, talking about what is needed without actually talking about which particular use case and concretely, right, is very hard. And we always need to kind of say, okay, is it now part of the application or part of the technology of the platform, the building block, right? And we need to say, okay, now in order to do this, right, in order to build the supply chain tracking, in order to build the payment system, whatever, these are the requirements. And okay, this is what you need, right? No matter how it's called, what is there, what not, right? Can we pick from the existing toolbox something which works? And yes, if the Hydra head has these things, then it is a good tool, right? Maybe until then, for example, until we have incremental commits and decommits, it's maybe not a good enough tool to do the supply chain tracking. And that is something I would like to kind of find out, what makes it a good tool. But there is not one tool you can do all things, right? And there we need to then expand our scope a bit more into more persistent layer 2s maybe, because this is often also how people think about Hydra, right? Layer 2s in general, that's that thing I can just, it sits there and I can use it. I can put stuff there for free and it's fast. Right? It is, in the end, you don't care about it's free or it's infinitely fast, but you care it's faster and cheaper, right? Often, more often than not. And I think this is maybe where where things like optimistic rollups, like Midgard or so, is more like that one thing, you give it a name, which exists there, which you can interact with, and it just works that way as a similar, like, smaller network, but still a big network, right? And then to figure about how you run it.
Yeah, it makes sense. It sounds like we should probably continue this discussion next time. We should really try to get Pi, Ilya, and Sam, maybe Michael, Yagi as well, to attend the next session, because they're some of the ones that will have feedback. Not sure in terms of some of the other members who have actually have recent experience using Hydra to build something. If there are some of those, well, we can invite them as well. When's the next next monthly update meeting for Hydra? Is that near the end of the month, or do you do it at the middle of the month? I forget.
So it was just last week, Monday.
Oh, it was last week. Okay, so I mean, that's another place where you can gather more information about V1, and I think you probably will, right, in the one that's coming up. So then hopefully through this process and through that monthly update meeting, you'll get enough feedback to have a clearer idea of what V1 should look like by the end of this month, right? Something like that.
Yeah, that's already very helpful, right? And I think, I mean, many of the things can also be added or changed. If you talk about consensus change, then that is something you need to consider.
Yeah, that's a big fix. Yeah,
thing. That's cross-cutting. So that's why I think having this conversation is important to have. So should Hydra Head be that thing you can just run in whatever form you want, right? And just make it like the tool for everything, but then it also takes longer until we have a point which we can audit? Or is it that only that thing which can do this and this, but now we are basically in within reach to say, okay, we scope it out, feature freeze it, then we have an audit. We can build more often features. We will do for more research. Maybe Hydra SOA is giving up more information. We can do also optimistic rollup research and development, as it also done through Catalyst, right? This will give us more information about, okay, we have this better thing coming up anyways, which fits these use cases better or more directly even. So thanks for the conversation already. I think it was yet another good discussion. About the process changes, we'll see about that too. Maybe one last question before we close this, in 15 minutes over or so. Where shall we collect about next meeting's agenda?
You mean, I think honestly, with if you just let everybody know, all the members know that they can go in and just edit the calendar description directly, I think that's sufficient. That's sufficient for me, for example, right? And I can just add my agenda items. And then I guess the request to them would be, if they add an agenda item, just put their name to, who suggested it, so we know.
Then I'm gonna take the one action item with me and say, okay, not only will I set up the next meeting, I will also, so in 2 weeks, the same time, let's see, I will also add, not only change the invite and then everybody gets new, but I'll write another email around and say, okay, just a reminder, feel free to update this and also propose different time. We use the Google event in it by itself to agree on an agenda. And by just editing everybody's and also suggesting, proposing new times, I think then we can hope for a nice consensus finding.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I'll do my secretarial duties today.
Okay, thank you.
After you send me the recording.
From my side, I'll always just adjust to whatever time you find best, just to bring these bigger people in. So why and so on. So I'll just adjust to the agenda.
Yeah, and Tudor, please, start that discussion with your devs in terms of your requirements for Hydra, what you need to be able to ship a viable product based on Hydra, right? Because that's the type of feedback that we'll want to have in the next session and maybe the one after that. I think we'll fit 2 sessions, like two more bi-weekly meetings in this month, and hopefully by the end of those, Sebastian and his team will have a clear understanding of V1.
Yeah. And this is more short-term roadmap, right? This is just what we want to maybe get done still this year, and then we have a solid foundation. We can have applications, businesses running on top of that already. And then while we do other research and development, which then will flow into like next versions or different topicals.
Yep, sounds good. All right, bye everybody. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.